Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our second episode learning about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In order to learn about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have to investigate what were the surrounding conditions before his birth sallallahu alaihi wasallam and before his ba'tha. So we're going to address a little bit of history, a little bit of geography, a little bit of social sciences, looking at what were the existing conditions that preceded the birth and the ba'tha of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in Mecca al-Mukarramah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's look at what is Mecca and what were the conditions in Mecca. What's the importance of Mecca? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose this particular place for the birth of his last prophet and messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Historically speaking, the founding of Mecca was by Sayyidah Hajer and her son Sayyidina Ismail ala nabina wa alayhi salatu wassalam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Sayyidina Ibrahim ala nabina wa alayhi salatu wassalam to take his wife and newborn child to this desolate place, it was basically an empty valley surrounded by mountains from all sides. And Sayyidina Ibrahim, when he looked at it, he recognized that this is a very inhospitable place. It doesn't have any source of water. The weather there is extremely harsh, extremely hot in summer, and still hot in winter. There are no tribes living there. There are no caravans even passing by this area because it was not on the major trade routes, north to south or south to north and east to west. And we're going to talk a little bit about these different paths of trade. So when Sayyidina Ibrahim ala nabina alayhi salatu wassalam responded to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِن ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ. Oh Allah, I have taken my family and made them inhabit this valley that does not have any source of plantation. عند بيتك المحرم, at the place where you commanded me to raise the foundations and the walls for your sacred house. So Sayyidah Hajar, when her husband Sayyidina Ibrahim was about to leaving her in this desolate place, she asked him a question. Allahu amaraka bihada? Are you doing that out of your own volition, or did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command you to do so? And he nodded in the affirmative, meaning that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who commanded me to do so. So she responded, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let us perish. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of us. She had this full confidence and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know the story that is commemorated until today in parts of the rituals of Hajj, the Sa'i, bayna al-Safa wal-Marwa, between these two hills close to Al-Kaaba, before the Kaaba was built. So when the few dates that were left with her and when the water that was left ran out, she started looking for food and water. Her son is thirsty, he's crying, he's about to die. So she started to look around, but again, it's a desolate place, it's a totally flat place, she could see to a distance. So she started ascending these hills. The first one, As-Safa, she ascended it, started looking around, nothing's there. She went down and started running to the other hill on the other side, nothing there. And she kept doing that back and forth 7 times. What we do today as as-sa'i bayna al-Safa wal-Marwa. And each time between the two hills, she would go and check on her newborn. And again, there's nothing there. Until at the end, when she sort of lost any hope in other humans helping her, there's no human in the horizon, she totally submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the full trust. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let us perish. I have exhausted all of my means, of my human means, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find a solution for me. And according to the different narrations, it was either Sayyidina Ismail ala nabina wa alayhi salatu wasalam hit the ground with his heel. You can imagine the heel of a newborn, how strong could that be? It would be a very faint blow to the ground. Or in another narration that Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam picked the ground with the tip of his wing and water started gushing out of nowhere. And that water was coming so strongly that after Sayyidah Hajar and her son drank to their full, she started surrounding this water and kept saying, Zam, Zam, which means in her language, stop, stop. And that became the well of Zamzam. The Prophet ﷺ says that were it not that she tried to surround it and to confine it, it would have been a flowing river. Upon doing that, birds started appearing out of nowhere because there's water in the desert, so birds started circling in the sky above her, and a caravan who was traveling quite far from that location started seeing these birds, which is a very unexpected scene in the desert. What would these birds be doing in the desert? There's got to be water. That was the sign for water. So they approached and they found her and her newborn, and she made a condition. If you want to use this water, you have to inhabit this area and become settlers in this area. So that tribe of Jurhum settled in this area, and that was the beginning of the settlement of Mecca al-Mukarramah. If you look at the geography of that area, again, as I said, it's a desolate place. There's no known natural resources, no minerals, no scenery, no plantation, nothing whatsoever that can attract people to settle there. However, if you look at it from a different perspective, that was an ideal location for the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be put there and people to frequent it until the day of judgment or until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Mecca al-Mukarramah, if you look at it, was sort of in the middle of a triangle that represented the intersection of three trade routes. One is the very famous Silk Road that spanned from China to the east to Europe to the west, the Roman Empire, stopping by Asham, which is what's now Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. That whole area was known as Asham. So that was a northern trade route, one line in that triangle. There was another route, which was the frankincense road. Frankincense is what we use today for bukhur, for its fragrant smell. And the country that produces frankincense more than any country in the world, or the source of that frankincense, is what is now Oman, the country of the Sultanate of Oman in the southeastern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. So again, this frankincense was used in temples for ritual, for worshipping rituals and so on, whether in the temples of Habasha, the Christian churches of Habasha, or in the northern Byzantine Empire, Roman part, the branch of the Roman Empire. So they used to use frankincense for their celebrations and their worships and so on and so forth. So it was a very valuable commodity. So that's another intersecting line that crisscrosses or meets at a certain point with the frankincense, with the Silk Road. The third one was the Spice Road. The Spice Road basically started in Yemen, or on the opposite side of the Red Sea in Abyssinia, Habasha. There was a strong trade that took place between the two sides of the Red Sea. Due to the narrow entrance of the Red Sea, it was easy to navigate this narrow entrance. So there was a strong trade between Yemen and Habasha. And later on, we're going to talk about, again, events that preceded the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, how there was an invasion from Habasha to Yemen for some political and strategic and religious purposes as well. So this trade, again, spices were a very valuable currency and commodity, and it was actually used sometimes as a currency. And these were exotic spices, again, to the people who used to live in the north, in Asham and beyond. Asham was the border to Europe, or to the European Roman Empire. So that was another source of trade or route of trade, and this would be the vertical one. So we have three crisscrossing lines, and if you look at the triangle formed by these lines, you're going to find that Mecca would almost be in the center of that triangle. So as a stopping point, it would make sense for trading caravans to stop and renew their supplies for the long road, it would make sense for Mecca to be a trading post. The two major empires at that time, of course, were the Persian Empire to the east and the Roman Empire to the west. These were two great empires that were almost constantly in war with each other. These wars, major wars, would erupt probably every 5 to 7 years. One side would win this time, another side would win that time, and the allegiance and the alliances of the people in between would switch and shift based on the winning party. So we're going to find, for example, that in Yemen, there was a Persian satellite of the Persian Empire, and then it was a satellite of the Roman Empire, the Christian Empire, and then it kept switching back and forth, and at a certain point in time, both empires existed through colonies and settlements in the same place in Yemen. Same thing can be said about Asham. So it was Roman, then the Persians came and invaded it, and invaded Bayt al-Maqdis and kicked out the Romans and massacred them, and then the Romans later on won another battle, so it kept switching back and forth between the two. Wars in general are bad for trade, because again, the trade routes are not safe to travel, so there's got to be some way to secure trade. And whoever controls the keys to this security is going to be a very wealthy person or a very wealthy civilization. So that again, as we're going to see in the future, inshallah, was one of the reasons why Mecca had a certain prominence or certain geostrategic or geographic importance when it came to the trade of that ancient world. When it comes to occupation, due to the lack of resources in Mecca, it was never an ambition for any of the major empires to occupy Mecca. What to occupy it for? Again, for the exception that it was a trade post, other than that it did not have any particular value. So you're going to find the people of Mecca, the settlers of Mecca who kept inhabiting it after Jurhum settled it for the first time, you're going to find that these people were not subject to occupation by the Romans, nor by the Persians, nor by any other civilization that preceded them. The only exception to that was the attempt, very close to the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, of the Roman satellite in Habasha, their allies in Habasha, to occupy Mecca al-Mukarramah for a certain reason that we're going to talk about next time, inshallah. And that was a failed attempt. Again, it was documented in the Quran in Surah Al-Fil, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ, and that was the year when the Prophet ﷺ was born. But again, other than that, Mecca relied on tribes. So the unit there was the tribe. There was no dynasty, there was no king, there was no emperor. It was the chief of the tribe that was the head of the unit or the leader of the unit. And there were many tribes that inhabited Mecca. At a certain point in time, due to the fraction of these different tribes, an attempt was made to unite them by one great-great-grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, Fihr ibn Malik. And when he united these different tribes to become one strong tribe with multiple branches, it was named Quraysh. Quraysh means the one that was gathered around one thing. So there are different explanations for the name of Quraysh. That one of them is that they were relying primarily on trade, and that the currency can be translated as qirsh. And another explanation is that when they became united, they became strong and they could defeat all the other smaller tribes, like a shark eats small fish, and shark in Arabic is samak al-qirsh. And the third translation is the unity. Quraysh taqarrashat or tajamma'at, or united and gathered under the leadership of one strong leader, and that was one of the other reasons why it was named Quraysh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds Quraysh about his bounty upon them in the surah that's named accordingly in the Quran, Surah Quraysh, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them about an event that's going to come by one of the grandsons of Quraysh and the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hashim, who started thinking strategically about forming alliances along the way. He started thinking, how can I make use of this continuous feud between the Romans and the Persians? How can I secure an uninterrupted and safe and secure trade route that would allow for the flow of goods and money from north to south, not affected by who was controlling which post in Asham or in Al-Yemen? So he started this concept of the Ilaf. The Ilaf was a series of agreements, peace agreement, safe trade agreements, safe passage agreements with the tribes along the way between the north in Asham and the south in Al-Yemen. So Hashim, who used to travel back and forth during the caravans in summer and in winter to Asham and to Al-Yemen respectively, he managed to forge these alliances and these agreements, allowing for trade to pass safely. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds Quraysh about this bounty, how you were destitute and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enabled you to form these alliances that helped you prosper and form a wealthy society in Mecca that is void of any natural resources. However, you became a central point and a focal point. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, لِإِيلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِيلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Their habit, it became a customary trip. It was something that they used to do very frequently without even thinking about any dangers or any perils along the way. إِيلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. What should you do to appreciate the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Let them worship the Lord of this house that they have among them, built by Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Ismail. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. Inshallah, next time we're going to talk about why أطعمهم من جوع and then آمنهم من خوف, and we're going to use some, again, reference to modern social knowledge and social studies from modern scholars who try to put a hierarchy for the human needs, particularly Abraham Maslow. With that, we're going to conclude for this time. Jazakumullahu khairan, and I'm always waiting for your comments and feedback. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.